brother and my friend, Dr. Julius Muya, the Principal Secretary at the National Treasury, the Inspector General of the National Police Service, Mr. Matiang'I, DPP Nuruddin Haji, my friend DG Saitoti, and all of you wonderful people who have come here this morning. 6 speeches and 1 presentation is good enough for a morning. I have a 10-page speech which I will spare you, and then go straight to the issue so that we can get some stuff done this morning. First of all, thank you so much, Micah, for the fantastic job that you have done with your team to get this report out. I agree with everything that has been said by my colleagues, especially the ones from the security sector who spoke before me. It's important for our country that we are able to achieve this, namely, work on this and develop a national risk assessment report. And I join colleagues who have proposed that we should continue this tradition and stay on this trajectory of regular assessment of how we are and where we are in terms of challenges we face with money laundering. Of course, all life, public and private, depending on what we do in terms of career, is driven by perspective, where you come from. We from the security sector are interested in this heavily because everyone understands the challenges we have faced in this region from terrorism, since the attack at the US Embassy all the way to Westgate, Dusi 2, the attack at Garissa University. And no one knows this than my friend Hilary Mutyambai, that we don't sleep because we are looking for some interesting people who occasionally try to look for installations around the country to attack. And therefore, terrorism remains a challenge and will remain a challenge for a long time to come. And for work that has been done such as this, that enables us to understand where we are in terms of monies that move around to facilitate crime, are very important for us and for the work that we intend to do. So I thank you very much. Secondly, we do well and we've done well in the past because of institutional collaboration. I propose that we step up our interinstitutional working so that we succeed. In the security sector, we have succeeded because of the multi-agents framework that we put in place, where we all sit around the table, we compare notes all the time, we share intelligence all the time, and we always agree on the actions that we need to take before we move forward. I agree with colleagues who proposed before me that we now need to draw in other actors in this sector so that we understand this money laundering terrain, its effects, and its dynamic character as we go forward. And it changes from time to time. Thirdly, we face challenges that we need to look at, in my view. One, which you highlighted yourself, is tidying up the regulatory environment. We have too many scattered pieces of legislation across the board that either will build trade, inhibit, or make it very difficult to have a straightforward regulatory regime. To strike a balance between the NGO coordination board work and the songs that we keep hearing in this country every day about human rights and rights to association and so on and so forth is necessary. If today, as Minister for Interior, I ordered an audit of some of the NGOs around here, you will see NGOs in the streets saying, oh, I am taking away people's freedoms, and so on and so forth. Yet in actual fact, in a serious environment where we need to be honest with one another, you should not have a problem accounting for the money that you have if you are an NGO. And if you are receiving the money from clean sources, why should you have a problem to account for it? But even then, you highlighted the problem yourself. The non-state actors are regulated across everywhere. Either they are at registrar of societies, the NGO Coordination Board, they're regulated by many other agencies. Now is the time. I believe in the next report, we will look at several things. One, the legislative ecosystem that we have in place, is it facilitative or inhibitive to management or money laundering? Because even formalization of our financial sector will require that we tidy up our regulatory environment and ensure that the legislative environment we have is facilitative of a more formalized economy or a more formalized financial environment, as it were. Fourthly, I would like to propose that in addition to doing a risk assessment in future as we go forward, now let us pick out what I may call frontline institutions in this regulatory environment and scan them. Frontline institutions include, for example, the immigration department, which is in my ministry. I have been fighting people called second-hand motor vehicle dealers. Now, 2/3 of them don't have permits, but they are operating because they have paid some of your people and they bribe them every day. And you see, the question is, we need to scan this environment and figure out what we are going to do in terms of enforcement. Let's pick out the frontline institutions in the regulatory infrastructure and then see how we can scan and make those institutions effective. Because if immigration is not effective in terms of issuance of work permits and knowing who is around and who's doing business, who comes into the country and what they do, we'll end up with cases we have been dealing with. I've been called to Parliament before to defend so-called Turkish investors who don't even have a bank account. And they are just operating around with senior politicians and saying they're investors, carrying briefcases, and they don't even have a bank account and so on and so forth. And no one knows their address in town. Now we have Venezuelans. You know, so the issue is, if that is not tidied up, you will have a problem. Secondly, look at other regulatory actors, including our very own police. I keep talking to my brother Matiang'I every day about these challenges that we face. Enforcement and regulation must go hand in hand. I propose, Micah, that in the next study, let's categorize institutions and pick out what we call frontline institutions, scan them, and figure out where the weaknesses are. Because a chain is as strong as its weakest point. Where we are weak is where we need to strengthen so that we can manage and ensure that our money laundering does not affect us, as it were. Fifthly, the challenge in this case is also political will. And I think we need to explore this. I am very worried about this. I have to be frank with you. As a citizen of this country, I'm very worried about this because all these things we are talking about, you can run down a list of actions. 2/3 of them depend on political will. Because you are not going to tidy up the legislative environment if you don't have a facilitative political environment. You are not going to carry out institutional reform if you don't have a facilitative political environment. Political will to do this is very, very fundamental. That's why I'm concerned. I have said this before, and I will repeat it again without fear of contradiction. After this election, 40% of the people who sit in elective institutions are active players in money laundering and trafficking. So do we hope that these people will actually tidy up the legislative environment? All of you Kenyans who have been moving around the villages, you have seen people who are carrying money in bags, lining up citizens, giving them 200 bobs. The bankers in the room, you understand now you have a shortage of 200 shilling notes in your banks and 100 shilling notes in your banks because politicians are bribing villagers. People are not working. They are standing on the roadsides to get 200 shillings and so on from all these money launderers. And they are laundering themselves into elective institutions to take decisions. Do you think they will actually tidy up the legislative environment, as it were? It's a question we have to answer. And this is where I want to challenge you, good people. Because all of you are middle-class players, well-to-do people, bankers, financial experts, people who live well and drive big cars, who won't queue to vote, you know, so that we elect a government that will sort us out. The election we are moving to will be critical in the decisions that we will take on how this issue is going to be addressed, period. Because either A, we elect a government that is costly with money laundering because that is its way of life and it will not achieve this. Or B, we elect a government that is against money laundering, that has got a basic minimum level of integrity that will join all of us in fighting this. Because the challenges of this are real. Let's not pretend about it. The challenges of this are real. It's just that, you know, certain things we cannot say here because, you know, we are in open forums and so on. During the transition from the former notes to the new notes, so I thought if we gave you time to say the things you saw, it was very interesting. Car dealers changing billions of shillings. How many cars do you need to sell to be able to have billions of shillings? And all these dealers are friends of senior politicians. They are now the ones financing all these 200, 500 shilling notes arrangements in the villages and so on. This is a serious challenge that we need to deal with. Finally, I like what you say. At the face value of it, and when you look at it, And then when you look at the science of it and so on, in terms of financial transaction and how we are going to operate, we may say that we are actually safe. But I would like to challenge us, especially, and in this environment, my brother, the Inspector General, and my brother, the DPP, are very well aware of this. The expanse of crime has now gone beyond terrorism as we know it, in the traditional sense. And all of it is fueled by money laundering. Whether we are talking about very dynamic and sophisticated cybercrime that is operating around, and so on and so forth, all of it is actually financed by money laundering. I would like to urge that we step forward. We move on to the next dynamic environment and look at how best we can now tackle the complex dimensions of how money laundering is funding the negative dimensions of our lives and is going to affect us as we go along. I mean, overall, I think we may say we look like we are on a safe trajectory, but look, my friends, where we find ourselves. Look at our neighborhood. Look at who are our neighbors and what's going on in their neighborhood. It is our responsibility, collectively, public or private, to defend our financial environment, defend our country and ensure that we are safe and secure by fighting criminals, including the white-collar thugs, who will say, I'm going to call a bank. And my friend here, the vice chair of the Bankers Association, will give my friend a loan of 15 billion shillings by a phone call. That is money laundering, essentially. As it is, it's upon us, it is our responsibility to step up to this and sort out our country. No one is going to sort out this country for us. And what we are doing this morning is an important dimension of not just our financial life, but how our economy is going to fare as we go forward. Once again, I thank you very sincerely for the excellent job that you have done, Micah. Thank you to all members of the task force. I've had occasion to interact with some of our colleagues, and this report itself is testament of one thing that we all know. We are a blessed country that is endowed with incredible resources, fine men and women, and the brain trust that went into this and doing this work is itself evidence of the capacity we have as a nation, of the things we can do if we are serious and we assist, as we must be, of the challenges of the day and trying to find solutions for the future. And I know that colleagues from across government, the Office of the Attorney General and the others who are in this, the ODPP, my colleagues from the National Police Service and the others who participated in this, we're very, very grateful. And consistent collaboration with the private sector is no longer a choice. It's something we must do if we have to solve this out. I thank you very much. And of course, with those many remarks, declare the National Risk Assessment Report officially launched, except for the drama we have to do here. Thank you.